folks. Welcome to News from the Rebellion, the podcast where we take a look at events of the Civil War and we look at how the newspapers portrayed those events, both in the northern newspapers and in the southern newspapers. In today's episode, we'll take a look at the declaration of war and how that looked in the northern papers and the southern newspapers. Both proclamations by Jefferson Davis and Abraham Lincoln appeared in the papers of the North and South, and there were different reactions among the states. And so we'll also hear about those reactions. Have a listen.
Harper's Weekly, Saturday, April 27, 1861, by the President of the United States, a proclamation. Whereas the laws of the United States have been for some time past and now are opposed, and the execution thereof obstructed, in the states of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, by combinations too powerful to be suppressed by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, or by the powers vested in the marshals by law. Now therefore, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, in virtue of the power in me vested by the Constitution and the laws, have thought fit to call forth, and hereby do call forth, the militia of the several states of the Union, to the aggregate number of 75,000, in order to suppress said combinations, and to cause the laws to be duly executed. The details for this object will be immediately communicated to the state authorities through the War Department. I appeal to all loyal citizens to favor, facilitate, and aid this effort to maintain the honor, the integrity, and the existence of our national union and the perpetuity of popular government, and to redress wrongs already long enough endured. I deem it proper to say that the first service assigned to the force hereby called forth will probably be to repossess the forts, places, and property which have been seized from the Union, and in every event the utmost care will be observed, consistently with the objects aforesaid, to avoid any devastation, any destruction of or interference with property, or any disturbance of peaceful citizens in any part of the country. And I hereby command the persons composing the combinations aforesaid to disperse and retire peaceably to their respective abodes within 20 days from this date. Deeming that the present condition of public affairs presents an extraordinary occasion, I do hereby, in virtue of the power in me vested by the Constitution, convene both houses of Congress. The senators and representatives are therefore summoned to assemble at their respective chambers at 12 o'clock, noon, on Thursday, the 4th day of July next, then and there to consider and determine such measures as, in their wisdom, the public safety and interest may seem to demand. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington this 15th day of April, in the year of our Lord 1861, and of the independence of the United States, the 85th. Abraham Lincoln, by the President.
The Chicago Tribune, Chicago, Illinois, April 17, 1861. By telegraph, the Great Crisis, the North a Unit. The Voice of the Northwest, New England, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, and Indiana. The administration doing its whole duty. The people will stand by it to the last. Interesting details from Charleston, no surrender of Pickens. The response of the states. From a mass of dispatches received from almost every town in Illinois, Iowa, and Wisconsin that can be reached by telegraph, we select the following as indicating the sentiments of the people of those states. Not a dispatch has been received that does not declare a settled determination on the part of the people to support the federal government in its efforts to promptly administer the laws and uphold the honor of the national flag. Illinois, Sterling, Illinois, April 16th. The most intense excitement pervades the entire community at the news of the conflict and surrender of Fort Sumter. All-party feeling is overwhelmed by the universal spontaneous outburst of patriotic devotion to our country and our country's honor. Tonight, we meet to organize a volunteer company. Effingham, Illinois, April 16th. The war news creates great excitement. Men of all parties, as a general thing, are fully in favor of sustaining the laws at all hazards and will fight for the stars and stripes. Decatur, Illinois, April 16th. The war news creates great excitement here. A large and enthusiastic meeting was held last night. Several speeches were made by prominent men of all parties in favor of upholding the government in maintaining the Constitution and enforcing the laws. Today, the Honorable Dick Oglesby is beating up recruits. Quite a number have already volunteered. Mendota, Illinois, April 16th. The war news was received with feelings too deep for utterance. All agree that the government must be sustained at any sacrifice. Mendota is not particularly noted for demonstrations, but will be found ready to do her part of the work. Cairo, Illinois, April 16th. The war news creates little or no excitement. Business in financial circles is somewhat paralyzed, and all anxiously await the final settlement of the question distracting the country. Many declare themselves unwilling to take up arms against the South, while others express a determination to sustain the government at whatever cost. Les Salles, April 16th. The war news creates profound sensation. Party lines are lost sight of. The Union sentiment absorbs everything, and Democrats and Republicans alike unite in support of the government. Military volunteer companies are organizing in various towns in the county, and but one sentiment is expressed, and that is determined hostility to rebellion. Kewanee, Illinois, April 16th. Strong feeling in favor of the Union prevails here among all parties. Flags are raised on different staffs. The current opinion is that the federal government should and must be sustained. Princeton, Illinois, April 16th. War news received amid excitement and indignation, and with almost unanimous feeling to sustain the government to the last, with both men and money. Galesburg, Illinois, April 16th. News of the surrender of Sumter was received here with considerable incredulity. War news excites deep feelings, and the disposition evinced by the government to execute the laws is heartily approved. Iowa, Dubuque, April 16th. There has been intense excitement in this city since Friday. Extras were issued on Sunday and contents eagerly read. An immense meeting of our citizens, irrespective of party, was held last evening. Speeches were made by prominent men of all parties, and resolutions unanimously passed to sustain the government, stand by the Constitution, and enforce the laws. The governor's greys are ready to march with full ranks, promptly at the call of the governor, which is hourly expected. Fulton, Iowa, April 16th. The news of the surrender of Sumter has created a profound sensation here among all parties. Strong feelings are manifested in favor of sustaining the administration. Clinton, Iowa, April 16th. The news of the capture of Sumter was received here on Sunday morning, causing the greatest excitement and indignation, and casting a gloom over all. There is a strong and unanimous feeling here to aid the federal government in every way. A company of 100 is now being raised for the state. Burlington, Iowa, April 16th. The war news caused intense excitement here, and the intelligence of the surrender of Fort Sumter created a great sensation. The utmost anxiety is everywhere manifested to hear the latest news from the seat of war. Political distinctions are forgotten in the unanimous desire to support and sustain the government. A muster roll is now open. The several companies of Iowa volunteers who have tendered their services to the government are ordered to hand in the rolls of their companies, with the names of all the members who are willing to respond promptly to the orders of the governor, to march as occasion may require. Wisconsin. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, April 16th. An immense meeting was held at the Chamber of Commerce last night. Men of all parties participated, and the excitement was very great. The feeling is unanimous for asserting the authority of the government and crowds of men are offering their services to the Adjutant General. 3 volunteer rifle companies were formed yesterday. The preparations for war are decided and unmistakable. Oshkosh, Wisconsin, April 16th. The news of the surrender of Fort Sumter and the stirring events following it have raised the excitement among our citizens to the highest pitch. This county alone would easily furnish the quota of volunteers required from Wisconsin. Citizens generally, irrespective of party, are determined to stand by the flag of our country at any and all hazards until the last traces of treason are wiped out. Military companies here will tender their services to the governor. Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, April 16th. There is a deep and determined feeling here to stand by the Stars and Stripes, come what may. The fall of Sumter so soon was not looked for. The effect here is to wipe out party distinctions and unite all in the determination to support the general government in its defense of the Union. Janesville, Wisconsin, April 16th. A large and enthusiastic Union meeting was held here last night. Resolutions were adopted pledging the citizens of Janesville, without distinction of party, to support the government. Henceforth, and until the present conflict is ended, there can be but 2 parties, patriots and traitors. We will stand by the Constitution and our national flag and endorse the action of Governor Randall in responding to the call of the President. National honor demands that all forts which have been seized by traitors should immediately be retaken, and we will aid to bring about that result. Madison, Wisconsin, April 16th. The governor issued his proclamation today, inviting the patriotic and loyal citizens of the state to enroll themselves into companies of 78 men each, and to advise the executive of their readiness to muster into service immediately. Detailed instructions will be furnished on acceptance to commissioned officers. The governor closes by saying, "In times of public danger, bad men grow bold and reckless. The property of citizens becomes unsafe, and both public and private rights are liable to be jeopardized. I enjoin upon all administrative and peace officers within the state renewed vigilance in the maintenance and execution of the laws and in guarding against exigencies leading to disorder among the people." A. W. Randall, Governor. L. P. Harvey, Secretary of State, Michigan, Adrian, Michigan, April 16th. A large and enthusiastic meeting assembled our short notice last night, irrespective of party. Resolutions were unanimously adopted, expressing sympathy with the administration and recommending the governor to adopt such measures as will enable Michigan to cooperate with other states in maintaining the perpetuity of the institutions bequeathed by our ancestors. A similar meeting was held in Hudson, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, April 16th. At an informal meeting of citizens today, at which Governor Blair was present, it was resolved, in order to expedite the equipment of the troops required from Michigan, to raise $100,000 by private subscription. A large portion of the amount was subscribed on the spot, and the balance will be raised immediately. General Cass responded liberally. Indiana. LaPorte, April 16th. At a large and enthusiastic meeting of citizens, irrespective of parts, held in this place last Everding, the following resolution was unanimously adopted. Resolved, that the secretary of this meeting be instructed to telegraph the Associated Press that LaPorte stands as a unit for the Union of the States now and forever, one and inseparable. Steps are being taken for raising volunteers. Rising Sun, Indiana, April 16th. Our citizens are holding a meeting this evening, expressing their sympathy with the government. A company of volunteers is filling its ranks for immediate service. Secession sentiments are not tolerated in this community. Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, April 16th. The Union pledge is receiving the signatures of all classes of citizens. It responds to the President's proclamation and declares an unalterable determination to sustain the government, throwing aside all differences of political opinion. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, April 16th. The volunteering is brisk here. The judges and members of the bar, after a speech by the Honorable Thaddeus Stevens, renewed the oath to support the Constitution. There is a call for a public meeting on Wednesday. Ex-President Buchanan exhibits intense interest in the news from the South and participates in the expression of a determination to sustain the government. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, April 16th, a mob of 200 boys visited the residences of secessionists, compelling them to hoist the American flag. The chief of police arrested the ringleader. The mayor addressed the crowd and ordered it to disperse. He said he couldn't permit any further indulgence of the spirit. He would proceed to extremities. If they didn't disperse, the legislature has passed a law making connivance with enemies punishable by a fine of $5,000 or 10 years' imprisonment. The 2nd Regiment, 1,000 men, tendered their services to the government. They are Irishmen. New York, TROY. New York, April 16th. A great Union demonstration took place in the city last night. The meeting adjourned in a body to General, Wool's residence, who responded in a stirring Union speech. Buffalo, April 16th, P.M. Millard. Fillmore made a strong Union speech saying, "We must all stand by the Constitution." Albany, April 16th. A telegraph was read in the legislature stating that the crowd in New York City compelled the Herald to hoist the American flag. That paper is now out for the Union. New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey, April 16th. The governor has ordered the military to the arsenal. He is apprehensive that the arms will be taken away. An attack on the true American is apprehended because the American flag is not displayed. New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire, April 16th. New Hampshire will respond promptly to the call of the President for troops. The requisition has not been received yet, but as soon as it is, Governor Goodwin will take prompt and active measures for complying with it. It is not probable that an extra session of the legislature will be called. The state will undoubtedly tender 2 regiments to the government instead of 1, as requested by the President. Concord, New Hampshire, April 16th. New Hampshire responds to the President's proclamation and will furnish the troops required. The Concord Union Bank has tendered a loan of $20,000 to the governor, and all the directors, with the cashier, agreed to contribute $100 each to the support of such families of soldiers of the city as may fall in defending the flag of their country. Vermont, Johnsbury, Vermont, April 16th. It is understood that Governor Fairbanks will convene the legislature of Vermont in extra session on Today Week. He will respond promptly to the call of the Secretary of War for troops. Massachusetts, Lawrence, Massachusetts, April 15th. Our city government this morning appropriated $5,000 for the benefit of the families of those who volunteered to defend their country's flag. Boston, April 16th. The bark Manhattan, which arrived here this morning from Savannah, had a secession flag hoisted. A crowd proceeded to the wharf and compelled Captain Davis to take it down and hoist the Stars and Stripes. Boston, Massachusetts, April 16th. 30 companies arrived, 1,700 strong. The governor of New Hampshire's requisition for troops will be filled in a week. A steamer has been chartered to convey Rhode Island troops to Washington. Connecticut, Norwich, Connecticut, April 16th. Governor Buckingham has issued a proclamation calling for volunteers to rendezvous at Hartford. The Thames Bank of the city has tendered $100,000 to Governor Buckingham, and the Fairfield Bank has offered $50,000. New Haven, April 16th. The Mechanics Bank of this city this morning tendered to the governor $25,000 for the use of the state in supporting the national government. Ohio, Cincinnati, April 16th. The citizens' meeting last night was an immense affair. Men of all parties participated, but one feeling was manifested, and that, to sustain the Stars and Stripes at all hazards. Great activity prevails among the military, and all the companies are fast filling their ranks. The Home Guard for the defense of the city will consist of 10,000 men, and is fast filling up. The merchants have stopped shipping goods to the South. Cleveland, April 16th. An immense union meeting was held here last night, Mayor Flint presiding. The meeting was addressed by Benator Wade, R.P. Spaulding, D.K. Carter, and other prominent citizens of all parties. Resolutions were adopted to sustain the government, approving the president's call for volunteers, recommending the legislature to make appropriations of men and money, appointing a committee to ascertain the efficiency of the Cleveland military. The greatest unanimity of feeling prevailed, and the speakers were constantly interrupted by wild cheers and responses. Similar proceedings and a large meeting were had at Norfolk, Ohio, last night. Delaware, Wilmington, Dell, April 6th. A large meeting tonight censured the course of Senator Bayard in not advocating compromise, having thereby placed the state in a false position as having an anti-union tendency. Maryland, Baltimore, April 16th. Governor Hicks thinks that Maryland should maintain the same position as heretofore, that she should protect federal capital and government property, and stand by the Constitution and the Union. Enlistments are rapidly progressing. Kentucky, Louisville, April 16th. A large and enthusiastic meeting of those opposed to Mr. Lincoln's war policy was held tonight. About 3,000 were present. Resolutions were adopted that Kentucky would not permit the marching of troops against the Confederate States, but would share the latter's destiny, if war must come, sympathizing with all patriots in the northern states and endorsing Governor Magaffia's reply to Secretary Cameron. Paducah, April 16th. A meeting irrespective of party, J.B. Husbands presiding, adopted resolutions recommending the governor immediately to convene the legislature, that we are with the South in interest and action, that the governor be requested to issue a proclamation for a convention at Frankfort at an early day as practicable to consider the position and future destiny of Kentucky, calling on the people of Kentucky to ignore party feelings and oppose to the last extremity the coercive and fratricidal policy of the executive. Missouri, St. Louis, April 16th. It is understood that Governor Jackson will refuse to comply with Secretary Cameron's requisition for troops. Virginia, Norfolk, April 16th. 100 guns were fired here, and there is great rejoicing over the fall of Fort Sumter. An order has been received to fit out the U.S. steamer Merrimack immediately and to tow out all war vessels from the port. Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, April 15th. There is an intense excitement here tonight, and a tremendous meeting is being held. Memphis is out of the Union. There are no Union men here. Louisiana, New Orleans, April 16th. The market is depressed by the war news. Lincoln's war proclamation was received with no astonishment. Everybody is highly pleased, and the people are resolved to maintain their position at all hazards. 2 more volunteer companies left today for Pensacola, and the rest will probably remain to defend the city. Volunteer regiments are forming throughout the state. 33 deserters from the Federal Army have landed at Fort Jackson, leaving 12 months' pay behind, so anxious were they to join the Confederate Army. The Galveston Civilian says that the idea that there is any considerable number of persons disposed to agitate the question of Union in Texas is entirely erroneous. The steamship Arizona was at Brazos, waiting for the embarkation of troops for Indanoles. All the courts of this city, including the Supreme Court, have adjourned to the 3rd Monday in May, owing to the present state of affairs. Honorable Tipton Walker arrived yesterday as a special messenger to Montgomery from Galveston to consult with President Davis about the defense of the Texas coast. There is much excitement in Galveston on account of the war news. The City Council, in an extraordinary session, strongly expressed a feeling of resistance. There is great activity on all sides. Several pieces of ordnance were today taken to Forts Jackson and St. Philip. More volunteers have gone to Pensacola.
The Southern Confederacy, Atlanta, Georgia, March 4th, 1861. The last President of the United States of America. The term of 4 years commencing the 4th of March, 1857, for which James Buchanan, the old public functionary, expired today, and with this term has expired the last President of the United States of America. An imbecile official is succeeded by a stupid rail splitter of Illinois, elevated to position by agrarianism and fanaticism, resulting in the overthrow of the best government that ever existed.
The Daily Dispatch, Richmond, Virginia, April 12th, 1861, from Charleston. We are prepared to apply the last argument. We are growing impatient under the delay. It is time the matter were decided. We are sick of the subject of evacuation. It is manifest that Lincoln has shifted the responsibility he assumed with such an air of clownish solemnity to the shoulders of the commandant of Fort Sumter. The man who sneaked into Washington has quailed at the curses and threats of the party that raised him to the dignity he has made contemptible, and the demand must be made upon the soldier. We would not presume to dictate to those who have the management of affairs. They have shown admirable discretion, and we cannot praise too highly their foresight, zeal, and energy. But has not the time arrived when the next step should be taken? Shall we submit any longer to the annoyance of impertinent and stupid messages and reports borne by persons whose coming is an insult? We know the intention of our enemy. We have taken advantage of his enforced delay. Braver and better soldiers than now occupy our fortifications and that are ready to march at the blast of the bugle never drew a sword or pulled a trigger. The spirit of our people is fairly aroused. The brothers of those who won imperishable glory on the plains of Mexico are at the guns. Our hearts are fired by the remembrance of grievous wrongs and by the anticipation of greater injustice. Our arms are made strong by the justness of our cause. With implicit reliance on the God of battles, we go forth to meet the deadly foe. Let the strife begin. We have no fear of the issue. Leaving the state, well-grounded apprehensions exist that in default of some decisive movement by the state convention in defense of Southern rights, large numbers of the most respectable and influential citizens of the Old Dominion will pack up and move off with their effects to some more congenial latitude. Instances are not wanting where some of our own most valuable citizens, disgusted with the existing order of things, have gone or are preparing to do so. In eastern Virginia, which, without disparagement to any other section of the state, it may be said, contains a large percentum of its intelligence, respectability, and wealth, multitudes of our best citizens are expecting to go south during the present year. They say that if Virginia does not go with the South, their property will not be secure, and that before the Confederate States cut off all intercourse with the border states, they want to cast their lot with them. About the time of the election for members of the convention, the people were greatly influenced by the strong hopes then entertained that an honorable and speedy adjustment of our national troubles would be effected, and thus the large majorities were given for Union men. But another reaction has come, and Southern indignation burns more intensely in the hearts of the Virginia people than ever before. They see that these promises of compromise have all proved abortive, and that the policy of the federal government will be coercion, and now they are for secession, or for prompt and united resistance. All eyes are turned to the convention, and the most intense solicitude is felt as to whether it will prove itself equal to the momentous interests which have been placed at its disposal. The man who will go for firm and immediate resistance, and thus aid in rolling back the tide of black Republican aggression, is the man whom the people will delight to honor. Sign of the times. There is now in the dock a little schooner, the Florida, which flies at her masthead a secession flag of blue, red, and white, with a single star in the center. The flag resembles the Lone Star of Texas and is emblematic of the change which has taken place in the people of the section from which the schooner hails, which is Jacksonville, Florida, the seat of the lumber trade in that state. The people of Jacksonville have all the sturdily independence of the old her, after which they name their town, and are not disposed to bow down to a black Republican idol or submit to oppression in any shape. They are all enthusiastic in the cause of the Confederated States.
Rally Weekly Standard. Raleigh, North Carolina, April 17, 1861. Rumors from Washington. It is stated that on Monday last, Mr. Lincoln would issue a proclamation calling forth the militia from all the states to the aggregate number of 75,000 in order to suppress the combinations in the seceded states and cause the laws to be duly executed. The first service required, it is said, would probably be to repossess the forts, places, and property which have been seized from the United States. It is stated that the proclamation referred to convenes Congress on the 4th of July. The Richmond and Petersburg papers of Monday contain what purports to be the above proclamation, which they say was to be published in the Washington papers of the same day. We shall soon know whether the proclamation referred to is genuine or not. P.S. Since the above was written, we have heard on what we deem good authority that the proclamation referred to is genuine. We will publish it in our next. We very much fear that a general civil war impends. We have told our readers from the first that secession meant civil war and the destruction of civil liberty. We repeat what we said in the last presidential campaign and what we said in our last issue, that the Union cannot be maintained by force. It will fall to pieces before the first touch of aggressive or coercive power.
Mr. Lincoln may call, but North Carolina will extend no aid to him in any effort to coerce the Confederate States. The leaders and many of the people of those states have grievously erred, but any attempt to coerce them or to put them down by force will make bad infinitely worse. The soil of North Carolina must not be polluted by the tread of armed men sent to make war on the Confederate States.
The mission of the border states now is to command the peace, if possible, and to maintain their rights in the Union. If they cannot check and control the two extremes, no other power can.
The Charleston Mercury, Charleston, South Carolina, April 20th, 1861. Latest by telegraph the Saturday, April 20th, 1861. The war declared. Proclamation by the President. First blow at Northern commerce. Letters of marque and reprisal to be issued immediately. The news. From Montgomery, April 17. The proclamation of Lincoln having at last been received here in a form sufficiently authentic to leave no doubt of its being genuine, President Davis has in turn issued today the following highly important and spirited proclamation. Proclamation. By the President of the Confederate States of America. Whereas, Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, has, by proclamation, announced the intention of invading this Confederacy with an armed force for the purpose of capturing its fortresses and thereby subverting its independence and subjecting the free people thereof to the dominion of a foreign power. And whereas it has thus become the duty of this government to expel the threatened invasion and to defend the rights and liberties of the people by all the means which the laws of nations and the usages of civilized warfare place at its disposal. Now, therefore, I, Jefferson Davis, President of the Confederate States of America, do issue this my proclamation, inviting all those who may desire, by service in private armed vessels on the high seas, to aid this government in resisting so wanton and wicked an aggression, to take application for commissions or letters of marque and reprisal, to be issued under the seal of these Confederate States. And I do further modify all persons applying for letters of marque, to make a statement in writing, giving the name and a suitable description of the character, tonnage, and force of the vessel, and the name and place of residence of each owner concerned therein, and the intended number of the crew, and to sign said statement and deliver the same to the Secretary of State, or to the collector of any port of entry of these Confederate States to be by him transmitted to the Secretary of State. And I do further notify all applicants aforesaid that before any commission or letter of marque is issued to any vessel, the owner or owners thereof, and the commander for the time being, will be required to give bond to the Confederate States, with at least 2 responsible sureties, not interested in such vessel, in the penal sum of $5,000, or if such vessel be provided with more than 100 and any men, then in the penal sum of $10,000, with condition that the owners, officers, and crew who shall be employed on board such commissioned vessel shall observe the laws of these Confederate States and the instructions given to them for the regulation of their conduct, that they shall satisfy all damages done contrary to the tenor thereof by such vessel during her commission, and deliver up the same when revoked by the President of the Confederate States. And I do further specially enjoin on all persons holding offices, civil and military, under the authority of the Confederate States, that they be vigilant and zealous in discharging the duties incident thereto. And I do, moreover, solemnly exhort the good people of these Confederate States, as they love their country, as they prize the blessings of free government, as they feel the wrongs of the past, and these now threatened in aggravated form by those whose enmity is more implacable because unprovoked, that they exert themselves in preserving order, in promoting concord, in maintaining the authority and efficacy of the laws, and supporting and invigorating all the measures which may be adopted for the common defense, and by which, under the blessing of divine providence, we may hope for a speedy, just, and honorable peace. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand, and caused the seal of the Confederate States to be affixed, this serenest day of April, 1881. By the President, Jefferson Davis.
Raleigh Weekly Standard. Raleigh, North Carolina, April 24th, 1861. We must fight. The proclamation of Mr. Lincoln has left to the people of the border states no alternative but resistance or unconditional submission. The Southern man who would quietly submit to the doctrines enunciated in that document is fit only for a slave. We do not go behind that document, and it is not our purpose to go behind it as long as this war shall last. We have labored for peace on honorable terms. We would hail it now, on honorable terms, with profound satisfaction. But much as we deprecate war, war must be encountered and must be continued as long as the foot of a federal soldier rests on our soil. It is true, the odds appear to be against us. The Army and Navy are in the hands of the old federal government. That government, too, has a name among the nations. It has the command of more ready means for offensive purposes in the way of money, men, and arms than the South has. And the non-slaveholding states which uphold it have a common head around which to rally in their onset on the South. The latter section has but a small army indeed, no regular army, and it has no navy. It has one government of 7 states unrecognized among the nations, and 8 separate state governments making common cause with the former. But though the odds are against us, they are not near so great as between England and the colonies. The slaveholding states can bring into the field 1 million of fighting men, as brave as ever charged bayonet or drew sword. These men can be supported by those who remain at home and by the labor of our slaves. The South can support and live within itself. It can furnish itself with every article necessary for subsistence, and it wants no luxuries at a time like this. In addition to this, our people will fight for constitutional liberty against arbitrary power for their homes and hearthstones, and, it may be, for existence. Such a people cannot be conquered. They may be overrun, their country may be laid waste, and their blood may flow like water, but they can no more be subjugated than the winds or the sea. People of North Carolina, a call has been made for volunteers. Virginia and Maryland are encountering the first burst of the storm. Their people are roused and ready for action, but they must have aid. If we would keep the battle from our own doors, we must unite with Virginia, Maryland, Kentucky, and Tennessee in offensive operations. A united and vigorous demonstration may lead to an honorable peace, but failing in that, it will place us in line with an adequate force to sustain our sister states.
The Confederate States will perform their whole duty. The legions that conquered at Buena Vista, Cerro Gordo, Contreras, and Churubusco will soon turn their faces northward to unite their efforts with their allies of the border states. The constituted authorities of the state have called. Let our citizen soldiery answer. They will. One heretofore for peace. And the Union comes forward to say to you that this is a just and honorable war. It is a war which could not have been avoided. It has been forced upon us. We must fight. Prove yourselves worthy of those who fought and fell at the Alamance and King's Mountain, and of those who, surviving, toiled and suffered through a 7 years' war. Fanaticism and unjust power are on one side. God and our native land are on the other. And may He who rules in the armies of heaven, and who disposes of men and nations, nerve every arm for the battle and give victory to those who are struggling for all they hold dear.
Well, that's our show for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe.